Everybody knows. Alrighty. Welcome to Patriot Lament. My name is Joshua Bennett. Online here, we got Mr. David Giesel. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Josh.
All right, you sound good. What a amazing thing. Yeah, remember you can check us out on the 97.5 on the FM dial, 660 AM on the AM dial. KFAR celebrating its 80th anniversary this year, that's kind of cool. 80 years of anything. Well, not 80 years of anything, but 80 years of goodness is good. Also, we're streaming live on YouTube. Jump on YouTube and search Radio Free Fairbanks, or just look for Patriot Lament. You should be able to jump right in, and we have the chat going so you can do some live comments. And Dave's running the program there so he can attack you at will. I mean, converse with you at will. Converse. I meant converse. Of course, we don't attack people. You can follow us on Instagram, and hopefully here we will have other things going. And don't forget our new website, patriotscement.com. patriotscement.com. Don't worry about the blog spot because we can still go there to archives. I don't know. I haven't figured out, because I haven't really delved into it, how to. I guess we should probably just have a link for the archives, have an archive link where you can go back and look at some of the articles there, because we do have a few thousand articles on there, I believe now. A couple thousand articles. Also on our YouTube channel, you can go and find all of our shows, unless there may be one or two that we forgot or didn't get put up, but going all the way back to 2011. The very first shows are up there when we did this 1 hour a Saturday, and we could only upload 15 minutes at a time. The good old days. The good old days. Now we're hopefully Mike's doing a little bit of moving here and there, and we're going to ask him to be in charge of the Facebook thing. Still waiting on word. I was hoping to get something from Robert Wenzel. He's got a new multimedia thing coming out that'll kind of be like Roku, Netflix type of thing, which is that'll be fun. And he's asked us to be a part of that, so we'll be on there, streaming on there also whenever that comes out. But obviously we'll announce that when it comes. It has not come yet. So we're trying to get it broadened out, expanded out a little bit. Tell you the truth, I would not mind doing this every day. Whether people would want to listen every day is another question, but when it comes to talking, I got it down. I've got it down. I've got 8 kids. I mean, I had 9 siblings, 8 children. You learn how to tell stories. You learn how to tell stories over the event of those 45 years. Believe it or not. Dave knows. I've learned how to tell stories. Any news that you want to pop up before we jump in here, Dave, that I missed here?
We in a later hour, we could jump into something that one of our listeners sent along, which was the wood stove deed.
Oh, I didn't see that
one. I don't know if you know about that. Yeah, we could jump into that in an hour 2 or 3, something like that.
The wood stove deed. Come and get it.
Mm-hmm.
Come and get it. It's I've talked about that a little bit on the various people. I think a few years ago, our friend, I won't say his whole name, but Abe, our friend Abe made a nice little meme with a wood stove on it that says, "Come and take it." It's pretty cool instead of a rifle. Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. It's pretty good. Come and take it. And hopefully it will be hot when you try to grab it. Yeah. So also remember, we do answer phone calls here on the rare occasion. 907-458-8255. 907 is the area code number. So 458-8255. If you're a local, feel free to call in and join in. We always ask that we don't always ask, but it's helpful if you're calling about something that we might be talking about. But since we are professionals at going down rabbit holes, we don't mind if you change the subject completely because you have something on your mind. We are only here once a week, so I understand that you may have something that's been digging at you over since the last week, and you just got to get it out. You know, like, let's say you want to talk about Tom Brady. Why, shoot, we'll stop the whole show and open a full hour for that if we need to. So just as an example, we're not going to at this moment, but just as an example. So Dave, you sent along something to me from the Joe Rogan show. And would you recommend our listeners subscribe to that? Is he worth having something? He's worth checking in regularly, correct?
Yeah, Rogan's pretty cool. He has a really, really wide variety of guests on. He'll have Tom Brady on one day, and then he'll have some scientist guy on the next day, and then he'll have Bernie Sanders, and then he'll have a historian, and then he'll have whoever.
Right.
He's had people on there for like gene therapy for getting joints fixed, and he has MMA fighters on, and it's a really wide variety of guests. Pretty much every show turns into an interesting conversation. So he has weird musicians on too. So he's really good at asking people what makes them unusual, and then having a big conversation about it. Anyway,
he's a fair host also.
Yes, he is a fair host.
He's not like some of the Fox News or CNN or whatever. They have someone on just so they can have a fight with them. He's actually interested in the discussion, and whether he agrees or disagrees, seems to do. I was telling you, I haven't watched him as much as I think you have, but I was telling you that he's really lets them get their talking points out without interrupting, and maybe something I can learn someday.
Yeah, he does that. And if he disagrees with his guest, instead of saying, well, I disagree, he says, I don't understand. And he says something along the lines of, I don't understand your position. Could you describe it to me? Could you walk through your reasoning with me? And so he's had this guy, Sean Baker, on, who's this doctor who promotes basically a 100% beef diet. Like, you drink water and you eat beef, and that's it. And it's a non-mainstream view, right? But it works for a lot of people. So he had him on, and then he also had the guys who made this documentary about how cows are going to be the downfall of humanity and the end of the planet. He had them on like within a few weeks.
Sure. And
both interviews were fair interviews, and both people are on, very far ends of a certain spectrum. So he's good to listen to, and then there's something to learn from him in the way that he's curious about people.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a good way to put that too. I'd have to fall on the beef side, guys. Yeah. I think, let's see, he had that one with the stem cells. That was with what's his name? Mel Gibson. Yeah, one of my favorite actors, because his movies are, well, he made The Patriot, so kind of puts him at the top of the list. One of the finest movies ever made. So you sent me along his interview with Edward Snowden.
Mm-hmm.
And
so a week and a couple days ago, he had Edward Snowden on.
Okay. 3-hour interview. And I think I'm somewhere around 20 minutes left. I didn't finish the whole thing, but I shall. And it was good. Wow. That was really, really interesting. And he let him tell his story the way that he needed to tell his story, instead of directing the way that he wanted him to tell the story, which I thought was really good, really nice. And one of the things I wrote down, maybe this can kind of start off our discussion. He was speaking about governments, in, a little background for him. If you don't know who Edward Snowden is, well, you have to know who Edward Snowden is. He's quite talked about. But he was raised in a government family. And when I say government family, mom and dad both worked for the government. So he was raised, trust the government, love the government. They're there for your good. There's a process, in government. There are checks and balances in government. We have a Bill of Rights in government. And he didn't say all these things, but I'm just kind of explaining the checks and balances. And he got into working for the intelligence community and saw things that were against what he was taught the government was supposed to do, against what he was taught the Bill of Rights were about. Specifically, I'd say probably the fourth and fifth in his situations. And of course, immediately his first were violated because he wanted to talk about the fourth and fifth. But as he's talking about government, one of the things I of course would kind of pique my interest when he was explaining what governments are now, what they do. And he really was speaking about the American people, but maybe that's not fair to just say Americans, because it seems like it's just how people are everywhere. But he was speaking to people always being afeared, always being afraid. We're always looking for the boogeyman, or we're always told to be watching out for the boogeyman. And the way that he said it, the way he explained it, one of the things was that we Americans, I shall refuse to say the word we, Americans like to elect someone who will find the enemy and then defeat the enemy. And he was not specifying, I don't believe, that he wasn't talking about Al-Qaeda. He wasn't talking about ISIS, which ISIS obviously is much later after that, or terrorism necessarily. He was saying, what I think he was saying was, we live kind of in a culture of fear. And I think it's more so when you have such a large state, such a large country, because you and I don't know people that live in, well, we might, but we don't know the Floridians. We don't know the Boston people. We don't know, they're all foreign people, but we all call ourselves Americans. So with the advent of communication the way it is now, if something happens in Minnesota, Alaskans should be worried about it. If there's a bar shooting in Louisiana, people in Anchorage should be in fear from that. And I think what he was saying was, since our culture has been taught to live in fear, and then taught that the government is there to protect us from things like that, what we do is that we elect someone. I used the word again. They elect someone, and then the elected person finds an enemy. So they're not elected because of an enemy. They're elected to find an enemy. So, okay, you're elected. Your job is to find the boogeyman. Who's the boogeyman? Oh, I don't know. Let's look around for a while. So they look around. There's the boogeyman. Oh, no, now we're afraid of that boogeyman. Now defeat the boogeyman. And I thought that was great, because that is so true, where we don't necessarily. So there's always been terrorism, right? Before 9/11, if I remember correctly, some forms of. And ever since 9/11, terrorism's kind of been the boogeyman. But over the course since Bush 2, like Obama had to find a different boogeyman. because Al Qaeda, that kind of got old. And then with Trump, so I think Obama's boogeyman was ISIS, right? That he created. And then with Trump, the new boogeyman was immigration, Chinese dumping stuff in America, trade. So politicians are elected and then they're told, find something to scare us with and then defeat it. And that's kind of what he was saying there.
Yeah. You can't have a war without an enemy.
Right. It's just amazing with the. I just like the way he said that, just because it makes so much sense. Why do we need to know where all the boogeymans are? I mean, in our daily life, does it do you any good to know every single bad thing that could possibly happen at every second in your life? I mean, you could already think of things on your own, right? And but then you get I mean, we have at the top of the hour on the radio station, even we have these public service announcements from the ad agency. This is brought to you by the ad agency. Blah, 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 blah. You should be afraid of this. And now you know, because of the great government that told you that you should be scared of whatever obvious thing that everyone already knows anyways. So I just thought that was an interesting way of looking at it. People do vote, and we hear it when people call us, Dave. They vote out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
They vote out of fear. So I will shut up for a little bit. What are your thoughts on that, though?
One of the points that he made specifically to that, which he and Rogan kind of joked about, was when he released, he didn't release any documents. Okay. So he gave very select documents to journalists to release under their discretion with attention paid to not exposing anyone to undue risk.
Right.
So this wasn't like WikiLeaks or something like that. And the thing that was said when those documents came out was that thousands of Americans overseas were being put at risk by this, and that the entire intelligence community there was going to be this massive backlash, and
people dying left and right in the intelligence community,
people dying in violent and terrorist acts, and of course, exactly nothing happened. So it's been 6.5, almost 7 years since that stuff was released, and exactly nothing harmful has happened. And so he brought that up, but that story played really well. I'm sure we have callers who remember, or listeners who remember that story.
Yeah.
I mean, Fox News ran it nonstop, and it was an attempt to create one of these enemies. Here's the big thing to be afraid of. And so, don't pay attention to what the guy said. Pay attention to the fear that we're surrounding the situation with it, and react to the fear. Don't react to the information. And it actually worked pretty well.
And he made a very good point that if what they said was true, they would have broadcasted that from the highest mountains. I mean, if all these intelligence people were being taken out and all these secrets that came out were put us in such jeopardy, they would have been able, and it had happened, they would have been very specific to tell us what those things were. And nothing has. The narrative is still, he put people at risk.
Yep. Which is similar to the Al Qaeda story.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have 9/11, and then the narrative is that everyone everywhere is at this new degree of systematic risk. And there's been some other stuff that's happened, but it hasn't been the fear that everyone adopted into their everyday lives far exceeded the situation in the real world. So same deal. Here's an enemy, and then there's going to be a war against it, and then it's going to turn out the war was not necessary because the enemy wasn't who they made it out to be. So they did that with him. They did that with the global war on terror. They're doing it with China. The left's doing it with Russia. It's being done with global warming. Like, take your pick. Turn on the news, pick any story, and you have an enemy that's been created out of nothing and a war to solve a problem that doesn't exist.
North Korea, on and on.
Take your pick.
Africa now.
Mm-hmm. Gaddafi.
Yeah.
Syria guy.
Assad,
yeah.
Turkey to a lesser extent because they're the Americans' allies, but we still need to be afeared of them to some extent, just because I think a little bit because he's in the Middle East, sort of, in that area. I mean, obviously it's not exactly Middle East, but anything Middle East, Iran, Iranians, anything. Yeah. Take your pick. Well, even the Muslim world as a whole after 9/11, we were basically told that all the Muslims have turned, like a switch was flipped, and they're all radicals now. They're all Al Qaeda. They're all Mujahideen. They're all out there to kill the infidels. Just overnight, switch got flipped, and boom, there they all were, ready to kill everyone. Suspicious, even the ones in the States. We had to. I am still surprised that they weren't rounded up like the Japanese were and turned, because there was talk about it. I knew people that talked about it. Wow, we need to do it. Right, look what we did to the Japanese, and they're fine now. Never mind. The real story should have been how horrible of a thing that they did to the Japanese, instead of, well, it worked here. Let's do it again. So
yeah, that was a good point that he made. That was it was a very strong point. I mean, he monologues for about 2 hours to tell the story about why he did what he did and all of this. So the synthetic creation of enemies so that you can have, well-funded, overreaching wars that go entirely around the Constitution. That was a strong point. Another interesting point that he brought up was that he was working as a kind of an IT consultant at the NSA headquarters on 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about how they had a full-scale evacuation. Basically the entire, and this happened at the FBI and the CIA as well. They basically had a full-scale evacuation of the entire U.S. government intelligence community as 9/11 was happening. So as the event is happening,
sent them all home.
They were all sent home. And so instead of trying to see if maybe there was more going on, maybe there was more coming, maybe there were more people's lives at risk, they were sent home.
All of them.
All of them. And so he says, that supposedly this surveillance and intelligence mechanism exists for the safety of the American people, right? That's the sales pitch. And then the way it plays out in reality is that it's a game of CYA. The safety of the people collecting the intelligence has primary importance, and the public is disposable, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the public is disposable in the first hand, in the sense that they can have their data collected totally outside the law. And then when an event does happen, they're not the highest priority. The public is told that this is all for their good, but the public is the lowest priority. They're sacrificial. Preserving the machine is more important than the well-being of the public.
Yeah, and he mentioned that too. I think specifically said that the purpose of the intelligence gathering, and if people don't know, what he did was he exposed that the intelligence community was recording everything, was getting information on every American in the world. Okay, we're not talking about intelligence gathering of the Russians, the Cubans, the North Koreans, the Assads of the world, blah, blah, blah. They were specifically there. All these programs, that great big NSA deal building that's like 1 billion square feet that they built in Utah was built to spy on Americans. And then, like David just said, supposedly to keep us safe. But when the action happened, the 9/11 action specifically, they were all told to evacuate their post and go home immediately. And Snowden said that the actors themselves, the people that worked there, were not for that. You know, I thought it was interesting. He said, you know, there are good, you know, whatever you want to call them, there are good, quote unquote, patriotic folks in the intelligence community that were saying, wait a minute, this is our job. We're willing to die for this if they're going. And, you know, the thing was, well, obviously they're going to try to hit the command and control posts. They're going to try to hit intelligence. They're going to try to hit the CIA. They're going to try to hit NSA, blah, blah, blah. And these people were saying, that's what we signed up for. We're here to protect our families, our friends, we're here to protect America. Why are you sending us home? This is our job. And yet they were all sent home. But I thought it was interesting that he brought that up, that it wasn't a mass panic there where they were saying, yeah, let's get the crap out of here. Rah. They were saying, all right, buckle down. Let's do this.
Yeah, it was a top-down order.
Yep. Yeah. And you know that the ones at top are the first ones to boogie.
Mm-hmm.
So why?
The other thing he noted about the true revealed purpose of those agencies that he saw then, and then, you know, he got into them. He joined that community for patriotic reasons after 9/11.
Right.
But he said that the true purpose of those agencies is not the safety and security of the American people. It's the continuity of government.
Right.
When in fact, the government in the United States, continuity of government's not a value depicted in any of the founding documents.
No, and it's anything but. I mean, there's supposed to be dissent and if anything, failure in the continuity of government. In, you know, the documents that we can readily trash on, but readily we actually know them pretty well and can see what their purpose was, and it was not continuity of government, which is what we've been saying for day one since we started this show, that the government is there to protect itself, to continue itself. They don't build shelters to protect citizens, quote unquote, during times of war. They build things to protect government in times of war. They want themselves to be. So to heck with all the American citizens during 9/11, because, you know, depending on what let's just throw conspiracy theories out. Let's just say they did not know what was going on. They didn't know what was going to happen next. They didn't know if there was going to be, you know, nuclear explosions at some point in time. That didn't matter. What mattered was when the dust settles, the government still survives. Government over country. And I like he did bring that up too. He talked about, you know, the importance of being able to disseminate between government and country. There's government. Our job is not to be loyal to, let's just say, as good citizens. Using a lot of terms we don't like to associate with. But as good citizens, our job is not to be a good citizen for that government. The citizenship is for each other, other Americans, continuity of society, of civilization, of neighborhoods, of, you know, your town. And government's main and only concern is to make sure that it keeps going itself. Kind of like the movie. What was it? Shoot, can't remember. The one where they where they bomb Russia. How he learned to accept the bomb, whatever it is.
Dr. Strangelove.
Dr. Strangelove, right? That was all about continuity of government.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it rolling. Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to we'll put the we'll put that podcast up on YouTube, or you can just get it on iTunes and stuff. He's probably on Stitcher and all those things, but it was definitely worth the while. Definitely worth the while. And remember,
for sure,
he was not one of the ones, don't get mixed up with Manning or some of these other folks that are whistleblowers or whatever. He was specifically just exposed the fact that the government was spying unconstitutionally on Americans, something they have no right to do, and something that had nothing to do with keeping Americans safe from anything.
Do you want to roll a clip from the interview?
I don't have any specifically up.
So at 1 hour 45 minutes, one of the things that he talks about, he has this term that he uses that I think is brilliant. He calls it a Lassie bark.
Oh yeah.
And a Lassie bark is, if you remember the TV show Lassie, or you've seen old episodes of it, if you're too young for it, like me, something bad would happen, and Lassie would come back to the house, and Lassie would be like barking and like, wah, 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 and then wagging his tail or whatever and running around, and they'd be like, "What is it, Lassie? Did Timmy fall in the well?" And they couldn't quite tell, and Lassie can't talk, because Lassie's a dog. So he talks about that when something really super illegal happens in the government, the president almost always gets a certain number of congressmen or senators or whatever in on the joke, kind of, and that way they're implicated. And so if they're in on it, it prevents real investigation from happening. Right. And so in the case of the program to collect data from all Americans forever and ever, with no legal framework to do so, they had a group of, I think he said it was 8 congresspeople. So like Nancy Pelosi was one of them, and then there are several others. And he was in the intelligence community, and he was concerned about this, but he was waiting for the system to work because he had a belief that the system would work. And so he knew, based on the documents that he was working with every day, he knew who knew about this program. He knew what representatives, so to speak, knew about the program. And this investigation was launched, and there was a congressional investigation with testimony and blah, blah, blah. And so he saw that, okay, these representatives who know are going to interview these heads of the intelligence agencies who also know. And so let's see what happens. And then the lead up to it, he would see an interview with one of these guys on CNN or whatever. And they would say stuff like, "I have grave concerns about what the intelligence community may be doing." But they couldn't say what those concerns were. They couldn't even say what they were concerned about, generally speaking, because they'd been let in on top secret information. And so to reveal that information was tantamount to treason. And so they had the Lassie bark. They'd go, "Bark, bark, bark. I'm concerned about something, but I can't tell you what, because it would be illegal if I knew, but I do know." And so anyway, eventually these representatives questioned these heads of the intelligence agencies, and the entire thing was a farce. Like the representative would ask the intelligence guy a question. He would lie under oath. The guy asking the question knows he's lying. The guy asking the question would let it go. And then when the testimony ended, what they would do is they would tell the intelligence agency guy they were interviewing, why don't you submit an addendum to your testimony, a written addendum that says that your testimony may have had factual errors in it, and then we'll add that to the written record. But it'll never make the news. It'll never play as a story. And so that's how
the story is the one that everyone's watching on TV.
That's right. So that's how they had all these guys basically not ask incisive questions, accept lies as answers, and nobody goes to jail for lying under oath. And the findings of the committee were that there was nothing here worth looking at further. And so the illegal nature of the documents was never revealed because they were classified. They were secret. And so they were kept secret. And so there was no way to show that what was being done was illegal, which is why some of these documents that's why Snowden released some of these documents. Anyway, if you start at an hour 45,
okay.
It'll give us like a 1 minute lead up, and then this guy's he'll play the clip of the guy lying under oath, and then we'll just let it go for a little bit and then just stop it at some point that seems appropriate.
I got to go through some skip ad things here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's just great the way that they get enough people in on the secret, in on the job, so there's enough people that'll be culpable if it comes out, or no one's going to say anything because, well, now you're going to get in trouble too.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the sneaky. They're dirty. They're sneaky.
They're Caesar.
Yeah.
They're Herod. There's a baby born who's going to challenge my rule. Let's kill all the babies.
All right, here we are.
We had, hang on, this famous exchange, which more than anything made me realize this was a point of no return, because I've told you this, you've heard this, but if you haven't seen it, you might not believe me, right? Maybe I'm a sketchy guy, whatever. One of those senators I told you that objected to this stuff, that was doing the Lassie barks for all those years, Ron Wyden, was confronting the most senior spy in the United States, General James Clapper, who was then the director of national intelligence, right? There's no guy higher than him. The buck stops with him when it comes to intelligence. He's testifying under oath in front of Congress, right? But more broadly, in front of the public. This is televised. And Ron Wyden asked him a very specific question about a program, mind you, that Ron Wyden knows exists because he has security clearance. He sits on the Intelligence Committee. And he knows there's domestic mass surveillance. And this is how it goes. This is how the top spy responds under oath.
So what I wanted to see is if you could give me a yes or no answer to the question, does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly. There are cases where they could inadvertently, perhaps, collect, but not wittingly.
All right.
So that was a lie. Wyden knew it was a lie. Clapper knew it was a lie. He actually admitted it was a lie after I came forward, 3 months later. But he said it was the least untruthful thing he could think of to say in the context of being in the hot seat there. But what does it mean for a democracy when you can lie under oath to Congress, and the congressman even knows you're lying to them, but they're afraid to correct you? And Wyden, by the way, it wasn't a surprise. Wyden gave him those questions 24 hours in advance, and he wrote a letter afterwards asking for Clapper to amend his testimony, right? Not even at a press conference, but just say this was incorrect, whatever, so he could go through the legal process and show his fellow congressmen that there was a problem and that they needed to do it. But all of that was refused to us. All of it was denied to us. And here I am, sitting at the NSA, next to my buddies who I've talked to about these programs. I've gone, look at this, and they're laughing at it. I'm laughing at it. And it's not that we go, oh, ha, 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 he's getting away with it. It's like, what are you going to do? These guys are, they're bullshitters. The system is built on lies. That even many people, many experts who have studied this know are lies. But if you can't prove they are lies, how do you move beyond that? And that's really a question that has never been more relevant than I think it is today under the current White House.
So you're in this position where you have this information.
That was about the end of where we were, right?
Unconstitutional, and you
right. So it's just amazing. And then
it raises a question that we talked about yesterday. It raises a really important question to all the voters out there.
Go ahead.
How is voting going to work when no one in the government is under the law? When the legal framework doesn't apply to elected officials, how is voting ever going to work? And it's not just elected officials. It doesn't apply to the intelligence community. It doesn't apply to government agents. Right? They're all acting outside of the law.
Doesn't apply to police officers.
Yeah. So how is voting going to work? And why would voting have to be done legally? If government officials can go around the laws of the land and face no consequences for that, even under congressional, investigation, then who in their right mind would conduct a legal voting process? Why would you even have the process be fair? You'd be a fool. And then as a voter, what's your recourse? Why do you think it's going to work?
There's none. There's no recourse.
There's no recourse.
Because the ones that it's just, it's something that we've said forever. There is no government. Like people like to have this fairy tale in their mind about what a legitimate government is. They'll read John Locke, right? And his discourse on governments. And say, aha, well, there is legitimate government. If this could be, that would be legitimate. But there's no such thing. We get asked constantly, well, can you show at any time in history or blah, blah, blah about how this voluntarist society that you keep talking about would happen? Has there ever been a time when that worked? The question that should be asked is, what is reality right now? And that is, how can you keep telling us that this works? That this government works? That there's some kind of legitimacy to it? That there's some kind of accountability to it? When, and of course, the answer back is always, well, you vote them out every 4 years or 2 years or whatever it is. Vote who out? For one, just on the obvious, they don't get voted out. They're in there for life. And for two, it doesn't matter who's in there. That doesn't have anything to do with it. Because continuity of government is the only thing that matters. And that's going to be sustained. We were talking about earlier, but, there's still people, well, they're out now, but how long, when Kennedy was assassinated, how many people were in government at the time that knew what really happened that stayed in government for the next 40 years? The bureaucrats, whoever they are, whatever they are, people on Liberty Report, they have, I can't remember the guy's name right offhand, but he was just recently retired in the last 5 years from the intelligence community. And he talks about stuff that went on in the 50s and 60s that he was involved in. They're in there for their lifers, basically. But to keep asking about, we keep getting asked, show us how this would work. Well, show me what is going on. Show me when your government, when your state, your belief in that has not only ever worked, how is it working now? I mean, they're literally just their own little entity going along at will, and we're just playing along. We're just going along for the ride, which would be fine if that's all you can do is go along for the ride. But then you freaking participate in it and tell yourself, well, this time, somehow, something's going to be different. So instead of asking us, when does this anarchist society, when has it ever worked in history? Where there are a few examples, in fact, that it has. Show us when a state has ever worked and not violated the people that it's supposedly there to protect. Ever. Ever. I mean, or talk about the checks and balances of the Constitution. When has the checks and balances in the Constitution ever worked? You have the intelligence community is under the executive branch, the president, right? That's executive branch people. Congress is supposedly the check and balance to the president. Congress is in on the scam because the executive branch made sure that the head dogs in Congress were part of the scam. Well, you're not going to tell on him if you're going to get in trouble too. And you can't count on the court to come in and step in and go, because the court was involved with all their stupid FISA or whatever. I think they're FISA or whatever they were with the warrants in the first place.
Yeah, they kept all for the sake of national security, they ruled that Freedom of Information Act and all that stuff didn't apply.
Right.
Doesn't apply. I mean, this is a 7-year-old story. Right? This is an old story. This is not a new story. It's an ongoing story, you could say.
And then again, how are you to expect the branch, the court, the judicial branch to find any other way anyways, when the people that they're going to find against are the ones paying their bills? Mm-hmm. Who sends them the check? Who decides how the courts are financed? Congress. So how much are you going to get after Congress? Plus, I mean, the other part of it too is that it's always like the Hayek told us, and the worst rise to the top. There's people that are in there in the first place, especially the leadership. They're the worst of the worst. This is exactly what they want to have happening. Like the congressman that knew about this, that was asking Clapper the questions. You think he has a problem with what the intelligence community is doing? Heck no, he doesn't. Heck no, he doesn't. Even though he raised his right hand or whatever and swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And he's a freaking domestic enemy himself. I mean, it's like, what's the difference of having them or having Assad or Putin come here and ask them to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States? They're not going to do it. They're enemies of America. Well, so are these people. They're no different. But a bunch of retards are going to go vote again and say this time it's going to be different. This time we'll drain the swamp.
Drain the swamp.
All right, we got to take a break. We'll be right back. Our number is 907-458-8255. Maybe we'll hit a few calls in the next hour. 7.5 FM. All right, we'll be right back. This is Patriot
of Alaska.
The public
public phase could begin this month. I'm Joe Giro, Fox News. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says there will be public impeachment hearings at some point in November.
Could happen really in the next few weeks before the Thanksgiving holiday, though no specific date on that yet. President Trump, meanwhile, tampering down any type of impeachment talk, though close aides to the president admit that it is likely President Trump will be impeached in the House of Representatives. On Thursday, Democrats with the majority voted on the House floor to move forward with the current impeachment inquiry.
Fox's David Spott at the White House. Meanwhile, Republicans continue to criticize House Speaker Nancy Pelosi for moving forward with the impeachment process. New York Republican Congressman Lee Zeldin.
This isn't about the Speaker honoring her oath. It's not about the Speaker honoring our Constitution. It's about her honoring an enraged activist liberal base that gave her the gavel to make her Speaker.
Speaker Pelosi says committees are planning to release the transcripts from the closed-door impeachment hearings. Impeachment also a big issue on the campaign trail. Many of the Democratic presidential candidates are in Iowa today.
With less than 100 days to go until the nation's first caucus, all the Democratic frontrunners are here. And Senator Elizabeth Warren taking a lot of heat over her $52 trillion Medicaid for All plan, which is making headlines, being widely criticized as mathematically impossible. Warren claims her plan will not raise taxes on the middle class by a penny.
Fox's Matt Finn in Iowa. Turkey's defense ministry says a car bomb went off in the northern Syrian town of Tal Abyad, killing 13 civilians. The ministry says that about 20 others were wounded when the bomb exploded in central Tal Abyad, which was captured last month by Turkey-backed opposition gunmen from Kurdish-led fighters. America is listening to Fox News.
Buy any 4 new qualifying Firestone tires at GCR now and receive a prepaid Visa card up to $100. Save on Firestone Winter Force, Destination, and Weather Grip models with Firestone's brand new tread designs for your car, truck, or SUV. Mail in the rebate form to receive your Visa card up to $100. Shop and compare. Your best tire value is GCR. Don't wait. The Firestone Visa mail-in offer ends November 13th. GCR Tires and Service. The Tire Guys. Saving the Alaskan Road. Van Horn at Cushman.
Social Security is with you through life's journey from birth to retirement. As your life changes year to year, so do your needs. For over 80 years, Social Security has helped to meet your needs and is committed to improving access to the services that make a difference in your life. Today, you can verify your earnings, estimate your future benefits, apply for retirement, manage your benefits, and even change your address, all from the comfort of your home. Social Security's online services help put you in control with secure access to your information anytime, anywhere, allowing you to spend more time with family, friends, or simply just enjoying the day. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow. See what you can do online at socialsecurity.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
It's hard to keep track of all the health information that comes your way, but you still want to make the right decisions. Here's an easy one. Get tested for hepatitis C. It's a leading cause of liver cancer and often has no symptoms. People born from 1945 to 1965 are 5 times more likely to have hepatitis C. The good news is that now it can be cured. Talk with your doctor about getting a blood test for hepatitis C. Know for sure. A message from the CDC.
When you love the outdoors, fall and winter in Alaska are full of sporting opportunities, like small game hunting, predator calling, and trapping. And Frontier Outfitters has the Alaska-proven outdoor gear you want, plus a great selection of rifles, shotguns, handguns, and ammo. Frontier has all the traps, snares, predator calls, and snowshoes you'll need as well. Need ATV and snow machine accessories? Well, they're right downstairs at Century Hardware, enjoying fall and winter in Alaska. It starts with a trip to Frontier Outfitters for your Alaskan lifestyle.
There's a crosshair, knocked down. And the world is on your side. You got to see everything, but all your feelings for the lies.
All right, we're back from Patriot Lament. Remember, you can listen to us on 97.5 on the FM dial here in Fairbanks. Or jump on, if you haven't yet, download the TuneIn Radio app. Look up 660 on there. It's a good app. And 660 has a app also, which I do. Actually, on TuneIn Radio, you can just get it right off there. Dave, we got a caller, so let's see what they might like to say to us today. Hello, caller. Thanks for holding. You're up.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, speaking of this truthfulness and honesty business, I had a lady in this town. I've been in this town for 70 years, running a private business. She filed for a restraining order in the court system. In that, the first line on those 4 pages, double-sided, that she filled out, says, this statement is made under penalty of perjury. And so she put 50 untruthful statements on there about me. And there's absolutely no repercussions. I beat her in court. It was an anticlimax, but it put me in a tailspin. I've never had anybody accuse me of anything that even vaguely resembled what she put on that paper. She said a neighbor of mine that I've known for many years said certain things to her that were totally fabricated. She waited until he left town, which she calculated because she had a conversation with him just before he left town. And so she figured that he was getting ready to leave town, going to run over to Rampart because he was born there and he spends a lot of his summers there. And when I got this thing served to me about 2 days after he left town, I just decided I was going to have to go to Rampart and get him to sign a notarized statement. But as fate has it, he came back to town, signed a statement that said he never said any of that stuff. And so this woman was a duplicate of the Kavanaugh hearing and just put my name in where the Kavanaugh name was. It was totally just insane. And then when she made her presentation in the courtroom to the judge, she added 2 more lies to the 50 that she had put on her report. And when it became my turn to talk, the judge informed me, quote, "You are not Mr. Despain, just remember," and not in a negative way at all, just being helpful, I'm sure, said, "Mr. Despain, you're not here to defend yourself. Just remember that you're not here to defend yourself." And I had 2 very wonderful ladies coach me on what I was allowed to say in front of that judge. That was 3 words: "Yes, Your Honor." Nothing else was to come out of my mouth. And so that was the court process. And there's no repercussions for this lady. She's running around just like she did before. I was no impediment to her. I was no threat to her. I hardly ever even saw her or talked to her. She lived on the other side of the fence from me. And the fence was the one that I helped her build to keep her garden, or to keep the moose or whatever might be going to encroach on her garden and the rabbit. and there's no consequences. And we had to postpone this thing once because the court system was backed up. But that's why the court system is backed up, is there's no people can just come into court with any craziness and tie up the system and get away with it. And now I could sue her, but I know she doesn't have a whatever to piss in. And so there's no repercussions for me either. She just ruined my whole summer. I'll guarantee you. I went into a tailspin over this thing, and post-traumatic shock disorder never even really entered into my brain until I got stuck with this thing. But you're commenting about truthfulness is gone in our society, even in the court system.
Especially in the...
Yeah, maybe especially there. Yeah, which is, to us, that's it comes as a surprise to us. Would you say it came as a surprise to you, the extent to which truthfulness was gone?
Oh, well, I had a big lawsuit. The city of Fairbanks fired me here 25 years ago, nearly. And yeah, truthfulness was gone, especially amongst the lawyers. Especially if they tapped our phones. I'm confident I could prove that they tapped our phones, but we didn't figure that out until we were too close to court. But if we'd have put the guy that became the lawyer that took me on, and another guy, we were both lumped together in one lawsuit. The guy that took us on became the mayor of the city of Fairbanks shortly after that, and he wiretapped information. We know that, and it was just that was just another proof that kill all the lawyers, and the ones you miss will be so few and far between that they'll never be missed. Well, I thank you for the program, most assuredly, but you are so right on, and it's just great to hear it coming over the air where a few more people maybe get enlightened about this facade that we live in. It may be the best. Yeah. It may be the best in the world, but it's a long ways from perfect. And I think pretty much everybody might agree on that one, except the lawyers, of course.
Well, that's probably a healthy perspective to have, is that it's not about tearing things down and talking about how awful stuff is. It's just a reminder that it's like you said, it's far from perfect. And so don't confuse, don't worship the system. The system is just as flawed. The system is just as flawed as the people that make it up. And so don't make it into a temple to be bowed to, so to speak.
Absolutely. And I thank you for your presentation.
Yeah. Thanks for the call.
You bet.
Yep. Thanks for the call here. We will go on to the next one, too. Remember, the number is 907-458-8255. Hello, caller. You're up next.
I sound like I get the beat.
Your beat.
Truth, justice, and the American way. Do you know where that came from? Your generation probably don't know.
Truth, justice.
The old guys do. Truth, justice, and the American. It's kind of a Superman comic book.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
I don't know. They just drummed this thing into our heads when we were kids. Every comic book had that. Truth, justice, and the American way. The Superman will save us. This is a great subject today. I hope we can get on and get some young people on here, because it's their generation that's going to be affected the most by this. Us old timers will be pushing up daisies before long. But you had your excellent, I think the Patriot movie was excellent. There's a man that was pushed to do something. There was no other way he can handle things. But Snowden is I think the best example of the young, maybe possibly coming up with some really good answers that will fix something. That's assuming we're going to be preserved at all. Okay, it's still not. I think it's in our hands. But Snowden is the reason why we shouldn't be attacking our own selves, attacking government, attacking military, attacking people because there's people, and I will say like us, within the governmental system that have the best chance of being able to fix it. For instance, the people within the police system. I don't know anything about the police system, but they're the best people to fix or correct anything inside that system. If they have the courage to do it and they find an opportunity, they're the ones that are going to fix that. In the military, we had, I was in that Vietnam War era, we had some things going on inside of that system. And we had something we were doing inside to resist this trend toward fascism, I guess. I could say I only put it to where my young mind can understand it. But we were doing things even back then, Vietnam Vets Against the War, for instance. So they had us infiltrated and they were monitoring us. Well, it was an attempt inside of us. General Abrams came out in his book later on. I had to get the American Army out of there before we lost it. So that's an example of that. And I'll move on from military.
So wait, and he meant before we not lost the war, but before he lost the military?
Before our military went into complete
disarray, probably.
Not more disarray, rebellion. Probably, you can probably ascertain what's going on.
Sure.
But people within a system can fix it. Yeah, you have your people over there where you work. Go-to people. If the lights go out, you know who to call. It's because they know the system and they'll know which switches to push. Okay. And the governmental system, I worked in government for 20 years. It's a system similar to that. It's a big beast that runs around, does what it does automatically. It doesn't really know what it's doing some of the times, but it's a beast. It does what the beast does. But they're also correcting problems, fixing things, making things, keeping the lights on, these kind of mundane things that we need in this life here, especially a big, complicated place like America. But the people in government, like Snowden, he's in that part of the government over there that really has got a lock on things. I mean, Hitler got a hold of it, and you see what he did with it. And he's in that system, and he knows that system, and he's the one more than likely to figure out a way to fix it. But it's going to take a lot of help. So people look to him, for his guidance in that way. So you have all these different systems within America, and it's the people within the system that are going to fix it. The ones that get the courage up and can see the opportunity. Okay, we can adjust this, adjust that. But that's the reason why we should not go for like a civil war, which is basically going to kill the good guys and the bad guys. Good guys and the bad guys in the military, good guys and bad guys in the police, good guys and the bad guys in the government. And then we won't be able to fix anything.
Right.
So we've got to realize that we are brothers, in life. We may not agree with each other, we may not like each other even. But we are dependent on one another to produce food, to truck our goods from one place to another, to make the fuels we need to live up here. And without this cooperation, we aren't going to survive. We'll go into, I don't know, the closest thing I can look to is Isaiah 19, the curse of the Egyptian curse, which ends up pretty good at the end if you read toward the end of the chapter. But the Egyptian curse is definitely not a good thing. But that's my point I want to make is we are all in this together. There are good people. And I think Snowden is an example of one that may pull that sector out of its thing. It's going to destroy the country because what's going on there will destroy the country. And I think a lot of us see it. But we're not in the system like Snowden is, so we don't know how to fix it. So him and his buddies and all his 850,000 spies that are in that system over there, they will be able to fix it. They may have a war among themselves, but they can fix it. They fixed the East German Stasi. Okay, they figured out a way to fix that, and they made a museum out of those guys. So maybe we need to make a museum out of the spy culture we have here someday. Maybe I won't live to see it. What do you
propose to fix, as in, let's say it's fixed, what is the outcome of fixed?
The outcome of fix is, I can only explain it. But the business I was in, we sit around in meetings all day and we go over problems, and we don't leave the meeting until we've got some solutions to the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the business that I was in. I won't even talk about business, it's unimportant. But the manner and method was we put our heads together, and we're not leaving this. Sometimes we call it a come to Jesus meeting. Sometimes we call it a something or other. Somebody's screwing up in the system, and this thing isn't going to work until we leave this room with a solution. Well, these things are going on all over the world now. And there's what we can do is where our own particular places are. I'm talking on a phone here, and it's going out into the airwaves. There's people sitting in the Homeland Security Surveillance Center. There's people sitting in all these different places all over the country, and they're listening. And what can they do? Well, they can look within themselves. What can I do? The Patriot, that Patriot movie was a good example of that. What can I do? Well, I don't want to, but it looks like at this point in time, fighting might be something, but I'm not getting ready for it. And it's only for the time that needed to be fought, and then after that's done, no more. In other words, what's appropriate? That's the important thing.
Right, and there's no. I don't think there's I don't think it's necessarily a time where, what in the movie Patriot or whatever, it's not a time to take up arms and rebel against the government and all that kind of stuff. Because you made a good point. When you kill someone, you're killing your neighbors, right? Because who are the police? Police are people that live next door to us. Intelligence people are actually people that live in the community. Some of them go to our churches.
Yeah.
They're
and they don't wear badges. I'm a dirty cop. I'm a good cop. I'm a great cop. I don't know what I'm doing cop.
Right.
You don't know. I mean, in warfare, it's the same way. I did combat for a good length of time, and it was like that there too. We didn't know hell what we're doing, but the ones that took their turn being point, you had to take your turn being at point. You did your best you could with it. You lived or you died, but that was your position then at that time as the bull point. And there's people all over the world that, well, you find yourself, you're on point. Well, that's the time when you can do something. Okay. But when you're not on point, you can't. But maybe next time you will be on point. So the people in the country have to love the country first. That's before anything else can happen in the country. The people have to care for one another.
Yeah.
If you lost the care, you've lost the country. Then you go into civil war.
Well, I think that's why we've been so anti-politics, anti-state and politics for what we preach about so much, is because politics, to survive on its own, is to divide each other, divide exactly. The people.
I mean, look around. Not that politics is there's not just two parties. There's two parties, three parties that you could identify. Then there's the sub parties,
right? And
then you go to religions the same way. You've got we can't. I can go to a website now where it's nothing but politics and religion. Most fun site I ever go to. You can't do that. You have a cat fight on the radio if you try that.
Right.
But that divides people. Well, so what? Sometimes your wife and your husband are divided against each other, but you work it out. That's the point, is that you can care about one another enough so you can work it out. Now, if the country wants to live, now us old guys, we've kind of shot our bolt already. Maybe we can do a little advising, but it's the younger ones, it's okay, you're going to have a country left to live in? That's the dilemma you got. Me, I'm going to just, all I can do is watch. I can't run. I got a bad knee. I couldn't outrun a forest fire in my neighborhood. But you have the opportunity to pay attention to the important things that will bring the country back to something better. But I don't know if that's going to happen. You have to it depends on the people. You do it yourself. If you save your country, you save yourself. If you save your neighbor's freedom, you save yourself. If your country goes back to taking care of and caring about the people that's in its country, then the country saves itself.
The people
take care of the people. If the government wants to take care of themselves, then that's going to have to be dealt with. Maybe they'll have to either be shamed, maybe they'll have to be shot. I don't know. People tried the guillotine method, to deal with the French Revolution, and that went way too far, killing all the people you needed to run the country with.
Well, I think when you get into that mindset where human life gets to be so cheap, I mean, you just start killing everyone, which is what they did.
Well, yeah, this is my experience. Once you start getting into the killing mode and you start getting into the realm of revenge, it becomes an imposition on you. And then that will you'll keep on with our Civil War #2, which is in the 1860s. The revenging went on and on until after 4 years, everybody was sick of it. Now we're ready to be brothers again. So why wait 4 years and kill everybody and do all that killing? It took care of a lot of the people that thought killing was a solution. But the rest of the country suffered too. Look at what it did to the everything, economy and the debt, and it made the government more powerful. But war is not. War is an imposition and a curse. But it's one that will be put upon you if you don't mind your P's and Q's and pay attention to the right things. Spend a little less time on football games, a little more time in history. That might be a good start.
Mm-hmm.
But, correct me if I'm wrong. Patriots are just too much fun to watch, huh?
Well, it's only once a week, man.
I was born out there. I can get you some good tickets. Got lots of relatives out there.
What?
I was born out in Massachusetts.
I did not know that. You need to become very much.
Yeah, they're all good Patriots fans. But I don't have a sports bone in my body. I guess I had a birth defect.
I don't actually really either, except for Patriots football. Otherwise, after that, it's kind of But, back to what you're saying, that there are the good folks that are in there, whether they can make change. Snowden made a change, obviously.
Snowden risked his life.
Yes, and
I would vote that man president in a heartbeat.
And he would not want to be.
And he probably would not want to be.
But I think part of getting to be part of what you're saying is there's kind of a decision, there's kind of a choice that has to be made of government versus people. I mean, you can't have, the way I see it, you can't have both. We can't participate and say, well, we're going to fix this government and love our neighbor at the same time, because the political side is to make each other hate our neighbor. I mean, that's the whole point. Hate your neighbor, hate your neighbor, hate your neighbor. You got to vote for me because your neighbor might do this to you if you don't get me, and then they're going to get him in, and he's going to.
Yeah. Some wise person said that the only thing you can change about people is their diapers. I got changing the government. We tried what we could do in the Vietnam War to change this fighting wars business and 10-year wars, continuous war, because it was just maiming us and killing us and making us crazy and ruining our lives. I spent I think a third of my life recovering from parts of wounds that I had there, and I was way behind catching up. Half my life was catch up. Well, that's all of us that got involved and had to do that. But trying to do something about the war, it just kept right on. It didn't end until 75. A lot of good Penn State or all the other stuff that happened, it didn't matter. It just kept on going. Nothing we did as far as protesting ever worked. It's just that the system just kept on. So there's some things that you just can't do anything about. It's the people, I think, just like you will learn basically when it's put in front of you or you just have no other choice. if you look at anarchy, and I don't know, I take everybody at their word. I take the scriptures at their word, just the way it says it. I don't listen to anybody's translation of it or nothing. Just listen. It says what it says is what it says. And people that are going to make the choices in their life, that's where they're going to end up. So, changing governments, I can't change your government. So why should I believe you can change my government? But anarchy, from what I read from the scriptures, I don't know. There's 70 references in there to anarchy. I checked them the other day. None of them are good. I didn't say that there isn't one, but I think in the scheme of things, what you have is judgment, and nobody ever talks about that. But that's what you get. If Sodom and Gomorrah gets so bad that there's only 4 or 5 people that are worth saving there, then he's going to preserve it for those 4 or 5 people. And then if it gets, he's going to take them away, and then judgment comes upon that. I mean, it's an example, one. There's probably hundreds of them. Book of Jeremiah, I sit and read 52 chapters of that just in one sitting with a pot of coffee. I can see the whole story there. If people will do what they're supposed to do, their land will come back to some semblance of order for that generation. And then if the next generation screws it up, they're gone. So that's what we're looking at here. My generation's about finished. But was the next one going to preserve it for a little longer? I don't know. What do you think? You think you got the strength and energy?
Well, I've got 8 kids, so I don't have much choice.
Yeah, well...
Got to have the strength and energy.
I don't know, I'm 70. I figured once my kids got past 20, they're actually not my kids anymore. They're sure. I call them my 4 tribes.
Well, I got a grandkid now. So.
Oh, you got a grandkid? Yeah, I got some grandkids too. But they're tribes. They become their own little tribe.
Yeah.
Just like Joseph and Manasseh, all these guys, they became their own nations. You know, they actually became nations after Jacob. But, yeah, this is you always said you're the salt of the earth. I'm staying on here too long. I shouldn't stay on. There's to be lots of people that can talk. The salt is preservation. If you lose your salt, you can't be preserved. Simple. You know, I'm not a theologian. I've never spent a day in Bible school in my life.
There's another function of salt as well. Salt's a binder. It binds together.
I think primarily it's talking about preservation. Because if you lose it, you lose everything. And this is where I see in the prophets. That's where I spend most of my time these days, in prophets and the law. If you lose it, you just have judgment coming. It's prophesied. So if you want to avoid it, it says what to do to avoid it. Micah 6. I've told you what it's good, old man. To love you, do justice. You love mercy, and you walk humbly with your God. Micah 6. Read the whole chapter. It's all by a good author. Anyway, if you want to be preserved, if you want to be salt, this is what you got. You got a future. But he will preserve the Lord will preserve whom the Lord preserves. That's his purveyor. I don't decide nothing. But I can watch. So our kids are going to have to fight the battle after us once we're gone.
Yeah, there'll always be a battle.
That's what we have. That's what we have in this life. What would you be without your enemies, Josh? Without your enemies, you'd have no character at all, would you?
Be boring.
It's your enemies that give you character. It's me walking through the valley of shadow of death for a year that gave me a certain character. It wasn't fun.
Right.
I don't look back to it at all. I hate to even bring memories up, but it did something good to me in that sense. As far as the lives and everything, they were all wasted. If I had died there, my life was wasted. Same thing with Germans and the Japanese. Their lives were wasted.
Yep.
Just deal with it. The Assyrians that were around Jerusalem, 180,000 of them, they were wasted in one night. He didn't have a heartbeat to care about that. Soldiers are soldiers. But if we're talking about preservation, we have to focus on the right things, because there's only one thing that will preserve us, and that will keep us out of the curse of the Egyptian curse, or will keep us out of any other curse that's in there, or the other judgments, the white horse, red horse, black horse, and pale horse. I think you're talking about with anarchy is the red horse judgment, from what I see. But you can see what you see. I'm sure you got your prophets and you've got your wise men and seers and on your end of the phone over there that you can talk to. But I see what I see. There is hope.
Oh, yeah, there's got to be.
Well,
I mean, you know, when we're talking about being anarchists, we're being very specific, as in not having a state. In the state, especially in the state that we have as we see it right now. I mean, the state that is nothing but a liar and a deceiver and a destroyer. And
I know exactly
what you're talking about with, you know, taking care of each other and stuff. It's kind of what our point is. Quit worrying about your politics, which does nothing but divide us, and worry more about your neighbor. Because politics does nothing but divide us as people. I mean, if we're a country of people that are supposed to care about each other, politics certainly doesn't do anything to the ends of that means at all.
Yeah. Well, my life is fortunate in that I've seen extremes in both ends. I grew up in Murder City, Detroit, and I was there during the riots. About 3 days worth of machine gun fire and airborne troops running around town. I was a half a mile away from the concentration camp where they put all the prisoners. I spent some time in warfare, and then I got to spend a couple of years with an Amish group, with an a real Amish community. They just adopted me like one of their own, and I got to see their good parts and their bad parts, and how their community worked, how their economy worked. That was a blessed time for me. It was a ship at the dock. I wasn't meant to be there part of that, but I learned a whole lot about people taking care of people in the biggest sense of the word, and which is coming very close to what the gospel is saying. The gospel is a thing that has to be accomplished or done or worked into your mind. It's not made to be anything else. You just do it. And if you do it all together, you end up with some pretty good blessings there. I remember hearing their complaints, and I'm saying, man, I don't hear any kind of complaints. But your complaints about whether the singing is lively enough, because absolutely nothing else is wrong in your community. All your people are taking care of each other, and the old people are there, and the young people are there, and nobody's going crazy. Well, I had some experiences. These are my experiences. I can't take you there. But I know that these things can be accomplished in life. It's just that's what we have to do in the 60, 70, 80 years that we've got. That's what we've got to do. We accomplish it or we don't. We either end up with a fruit, one of all the 9 fruits of the Spirit, or we don't. So fruit is what's in a result. Fruit is not something we fake. Fruit is a result of the tree being grown right and taken care of right. So that's what we got to do. But you're not going to ever see the fruit until you take care of the plant. And you water it, do everything you got to do. You got to be a farmer. So you're a farmer. I'm a farmer in life.
And we know what happens to the tree that does not bear the fruit.
Unfortunately, just deal with it. He says, I offer you blessings and I offer you curses. Choose life. I mean, he makes no bones about it. That's, and you do it willingly. I keep a Sabbath, not because the book says to keep a Sabbath. I keep a Sabbath because it's His law. It's his. He wants us to keep a Sabbath. The Sabbath is for us. So I keep a 24-hour Sabbath. I don't care if there's no one else in town that keeps a 24-hour Sabbath. I see it in the law written in my heart, and I keep a 24-hour Sabbath, and I make use of it. And I do no foolishness. It's very simple. We're a simple people with simple faith. We don't care what anybody else does. But if the Lord wants to preserve whom the Lord wants to preserve, He'll preserve the people He wants to preserve. That's been shown throughout throughout history. You remember that big pandemic we had 100 years ago?
Which one?
The one that killed 2.5% of the world's population. The Spanish flu. 1918, 1919. Actually, there was some in 1917. Killed about 50 to 100 million people. It went pretty much around the Hutterites over there. It didn't hit them hardly at all. He's able to preserve, what he wants to preserve. But, sometimes when my kids tell me, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. Well, I know when you're saying anarchy, I know you don't mean anything. I know you don't mean it's not negative. I just know. So, we've got a life to live here.
And the word too, to make people think.
What's that?
There's another reason for using the word specifically too, is to get people to think.
Yeah. And thinking is not always good either.
No, it can be harmful, but it's a good exercise for the brain every once in a while.
Yeah, he said they had some parable that said, don't think, just do it. Don't ask for any help. Just do what you're supposed to do. There's this whole parable. So, no, we'd like to think that we can change the country and change the world, but basically all we're down to is affecting ourselves. I think there's some things in there that said a wise man can save a city. It didn't say save a country or save a nation. So, see, the closest city to me would be Esther. So you got to find some wise people down there in Fairbanks and some down in North Pole. Because if that's true, then the only ones that are safe are Esther. If that's my cause. I don't know what my cause is. But it is possible, things that are impossible for a judgment to go around your city. I've seen it a number of times in the prophets. It hits everyone else, but it doesn't hit you. And the Lord can make that happen. So, Josh Bennett let's see, who's that guy in Venezuela? Who's the chief of Venezuela right now? The king of Venezuela?
Maduro.
Maduro, yeah, he's a truck driver. Maybe Josh Bennett would be the king of Fairbanks someday, huh?
No.
Hey, then you'll have the mantle on your shoulders. You'll have to decide who to put on the guillotine and who to tie to a tree. No. Or to deal with whatever problems are there. You have to deal with everything.
No.
So, maybe you'll be on that place someday.
Not a good idea.
Yeah. Well, we're all stuck with government. Is it governing ourselves, governing our families, accepting government and the civil authorities for wherever it is? We can change what we can change, but anarchy is a curse. But go ahead and keep talking about it, because I don't listen to what people say. I listen to what they mean.
Oh, I will.
Go for it. Red horse all the way. I'm talking too long. I shouldn't call in here very much.
Oh, we enjoy it.
Okay, Dave. I'm going to take off now.
All right.
Okay, bye.
Bye. All right, and if you want to get in on the conversation, 907-458-8255. You want to follow up on anything there, Dave, before we go on to the next ones?
Well, it gets into, that opens up a discussion about how you use words and what words mean. And that's one of the problems of large-scale politics, even small-scale politics, is what do the words mean to people?
Mm-hmm.
And even if you know somebody, it's hard to, even if you know somebody, you have to figure out what the words mean to that person and to you. And that's part of like a relationship. And politics is acting on other people without having a relationship with them, which is what objectification is.
Well, and it's impossible to have a relationship in politics.
Yeah.
It's kind of, even the whole thing with a representative republic representatives, period. I mean, what representing who? I mean, there's no personification there. They don't know who you are.
Well, and do they represent the people who voted for them? Or do they represent all the people in their district? Or do they represent the values that they said they would represent when they ran? Which one are they supposed to represent? You'll get different answers from different people.
Or do they represent the highest donor?
Right.
It's the latter. It's the latter. All right, you can jump in. 907-458-8255. Here we go. Oops. Missed that one. All right, so the lines are open. 458-8255 if you want to jump in. You know, when we specifically talked about this when we first started the show, certain words that we used. And one of those was the word anarchist, because it seemed to be the furthest. It was taking the fishing pole and putting a 3-pound weight on it and throwing it out as far as we could. That's one of the reasons why we use the word. And then we could reel it back in real slow. But by throwing it out there, we got the not calling anyone, not using this in a derogatory way, but we got the fish to go swimming out towards that direction to see what that was. I mean, there's plenty of Rush Limbaughs and Sean Hannity's out there that we could have just talked the same way. And I mean, how far out do you got to swim for that? That's not even leaving the beach. But when you call yourself an anarchist or a voluntarist and talk about these societies without having a state, not without having rules or governance or justice and mercy and all these things, to get out to where we're throwing that line, you got to wade into the water a little bit. In fact, you got to wade out a little bit to where you're going to actually have to swim. And when you're swimming, you're paying attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe the technically correct term would be monarchist. But the monarch is not one of this earth.
Right.
And so as far as this earth is concerned, as far as humanity is concerned, well, then anarchist. But as far as authority is concerned, for sure, monarchist.
A monotheist, monarchical anarchist.
Yeah. Complicated term.
Complicated term. We'll have to think of some kind of acronym for it. Oh, we could come up with our own term. Hashtag.
But I mean, even Hoppe wrote about that. Yeah, it's interesting that, well, Rothbard didn't have so many comments about that. Rothbard just said the man ruling over man thing isn't going to work, which, you know, he proved it. He proved it through a thought experiment, but it had been proven historically as well. And then Hoppe said, yeah, that's right. But of the options that people consider, let's compare it to monarchy, human monarchy. And he made a pretty good case for that.
Mm-hmm.
There's some critiques of Thomas Jefferson with regards to that, actually, which are interesting, where the problem with the monarch was that the monarch was a proxy for God, because authority was placed in the hands of the monarch, authority over people, right? And this is where the whole divine rule thing comes from. And one of the ideas of the representative republic, which is democratic at its core, is a democratic concept, regardless of the implementation, is that it claims that it's getting rid of divine right, but because it still has lawmaking authority, it's actually just shifting divine right into the population. It's saying that the majority has divine right. because you can't hide from divine right. If you're going to have laws of men over men, you're saying that somebody somewhere or some entity is God.
Right.
That's just everyone does this. All societies do this. Everyone says someone's God. And if you are scared of using the idea of God for God, then you have to use something else. So you could use a king, or you could say the king's no good. And then your alternatives are something like the dictator, the individual, yourself, or the mob, the majority of the people, which is the largest group. It's the mob. And so the mob necessitates the oppression of the minority, because God is the largest number of people. Therefore, the smaller number of people are going to get squashed, built in. Built into the system.
It's built into the system, right. Which supposedly representative republics like we have was supposed to protect the minority, right?
It was supposed to provide the mechanism for protecting a minority, but at its core, the principle is that the largest consensus determines what's right and wrong. That's at the core, even of the representative republic, even of a jury.
Right.
Consensus of the jury. Now it's unanimous consensus, but and so the minority has asymmetrical representation. That's the idea there. But even like the Constitutional Convention, as an example, right?
Yep.
That was what were they going for? They were going for, we got to get the majority or all of the colonies on board. So again, you don't get rid of the idea of God being in charge. You just pick your idol. You pick your idol. And Hoppe, of course, he uses non-religious terms to go through that in his book, Democracy, the God That Failed. And that's why he says the God that failed in the book. But it's not a theological book, but it's the same idea in economic and political discussion. Is that democracy substitutes democracies of all forms, direct democracy, representative republic, take your pick, substitute the will of the majority for the will of the monarch. And both of those substitute the will of people for the will of God. There's no way around it, really.
And it's proof, even a simple thing that people like to say, a little quip that people, well, who died and made you God, right? And that's always goes back to someone making a decision for someone else, or commanding someone to do something. Wow, who died and made you? And when we're kids, they say, "You're not my dad," or "You're not my mom," something like that. We grow up, then we say, "Who died and made you God?" And
you're not the president,
right? It's all politics are. It's just a matter of who is your deity, because you all have one. Everyone does. It's just a matter of who it is.
That's one of the reasons, this whole exit polling thing was a real issue. That might still be, I don't know. I don't pay attention to the news anymore. But 10 years ago, news agencies would release exit polls during elections.
Right.
And West Coast voters, people in time zones that were further west, their voting would be swayed by what the exit polls were on the East Coast.
Yep.
Why? Because people wanted to vote for who was going to win. Why? Because everybody knows deep down that the winner gets to be God and the loser is not.
Yep.
Why do people care about being on the winning side of an election? In the abstract. Like, yeah, you might want your guy to win, but when the results are indeterminate, why would you pick why would you change to the guy who's already winning? Why would you change your vote if you're not decided to the guy who's already winning, solely on whether or not he's winning?
Well, I think in the back of people's minds, they think that if they're on the side of the person winning, then that person will in some strange way, make decisions for them that will be good for them because we're on the same side. Or during the decision making, they will tell themselves, well, these were made in my best interest because we're on the same side. I mean, look at tariffs. You get these people that sit there that, Trump voters or whatever. The tariff may be absolutely destroying their business, destroying an economy, destroying a community, but it's good for them because, well, we're on the same side. So surely, whatever he's doing is for my own good. When you spank your child and say, this hurts me more than you. Yeah. You grow up and you're thinking the exact same thing. Well, surely, like when storms used to come on to people and they thought, oh, the gods are mad at us. What did we do? It's kind of the same thing. It must be for our own good. So let's find our scapegoat, sacrifice it, and everything will be good. The scapegoat in democracies are the minorities. All righty, let's hit back to the phones. 907-458-8255 is the phone number. Hello, caller. You're up next.
Hey, this is Charles.
Charles, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good. Got a little snow again, and
yeah,
all that stuff. You were actually bringing up something that I was going to mention from Aristotle and types of state. He really rose for a polity, not a democracy. Difference being, it is the few for the many in a polity, and that's all. It's not interpreted or translated any further. A democracy being a perversion of that. That's what he says. Democracy is a perverted form of polity. So, few for the many, and then stop there. Nothing further. That's his Aristotle's thought on polity. Marshall McLuhan was the name I thought of during your first hour. Marshall McLuhan. The media is the message. So what he means is, no matter what you saw on TV, the point is, you saw it on television. That was more important than the message the television had on it was the importance of you heard it on and saw it on television. And that's the real rabbit hole. If you want one, that's the original Marshall McLuhan. And maybe you'll end up in the hollow earth theory, too. So, there's one more thing on the CIA had some agents sacrificed during the Cold War because leadership didn't want to admit that they knew this information. So CIA has turned on itself too. So those are my thoughts today.
Yeah, they all those agencies, well, all those kind of systems eat their own.
Ike's Spy is a good book by Stephen Ambrose. It's really clear about 50s history. Stephen Ambrose is a pretty good author.
Yeah,
very good.
Marshall McLuhan, I haven't heard of him before. Canadian philosopher.
Yeah. You go for it, man. Sounds good today. Thanks.
Thank you, Charles. Always good to hear from you, man. We do have a little bit of snow out there. If you're not here in Fairbanks, Alaska, we got like 3 or 4 inches last night. Woohoo! Woohoo! Which I guess it is after Halloween, so it's time for Christmas songs, David. It's time.
Oh, rocket, man.
Oh, snap. Well, we're at the top of it, so we got to take a little break here. Be about 3 or 4 minutes. We'll be right back. We'll open up the phones for people, 907-458-8255. Call in and say whatever you want. Well, as long as it lines with the FCC. Be right back.
Of Alaska.
White House says it's ready. I'm Joe Giro, Fox News. The White House has been preparing and bracing for impeachment. This as Republicans continue to criticize the impeachment inquiry.
Arguing that much of it is happening behind the scenes, behind closed doors, and it's not open to the public. Well, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced there will be public hearings sometime this month. The president continues to play down impeachment talk, arguing it shouldn't have even happened in the first place. But members of his inner circle at the White House now publicly saying they are prepared for impeachment.
Fox's David Spunt. With the Iowa caucuses about 3 months away, the Democratic presidential candidates are campaigning there today, fanning out across the state. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders attending the NAACP's Economic Freedom Forum in Des Moines and slamming the president.
We have a president who is a pathological liar, who runs the most corrupt administration in the history of this country, who is a racist and a sexist, who should be impeached and will be impeached. And if he is not impeached, I will defeat him in November.
Senator Sanders now in second place in the new Siena College, Iowa poll, falling 3% behind Senator Elizabeth Warren. Fires continue to burn in California. Crews battling at least 13 wildfires across the state. Thousands of people remain evacuated in Ventura County, about 65 miles northwest of Los Angeles. Fox's Christina Coleman is there.
It lit up the hills as soon as it sparked Thursday evening while kids were out trick-or-treating in nearby neighborhoods. There's also lots of citrus and avocado groves around here. Utility company SoCal Edison said it re-energized a 16,000-volt power line minutes before the Maria fire started.
But the fire's cause remains under investigation. The Easy fire is now 95% contained. America is listening to Fox News.
FairbanksHelpWanted.com presents the world's worst boss, the one who posts jobs on huge national job sites, looking for anyone with a pulse. We'll just call him Dave.
We need to work as a team at this company, so today we're going to do a team-building exercise called Trust Falls. Sally, I want you to close your eyes, fall, and I'll catch you.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Okay, lesson number 1, fall forward.
Ow, 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 ow.
Don't be a Dave. Find your perfect local employee at FairbanksHelpWanted.com. Local jobs that work. FairbanksHelpWanted.com presents the world's worst boss, the one who posts jobs on huge national job sites, looking for anyone with a pulse. We'll just call him Dave.
Listen up, everybody. I'm happy to say that our office will be doing a winter coat drive.
Oh, I think I have something.
Actually, they just need men's coats in a size medium, preferably light blue.
What charity is this exactly?
None of your business, Foundation.
Don't be a Dave. Find your perfect local employee at FairbanksHelpWanted.com. Local jobs that work.
When you love the outdoors, fall and winter in Alaska are full of sporting opportunities, like small game hunting, predator calling and trapping. And Frontier Outfitters has the Alaska-proven outdoor gear you want. Plus, a great selection of rifles, shotguns, handguns, and ammo. Frontier has all the traps, snares, predator calls, and snowshoes you'll need as well. Need ATV and snow machine accessories? Well, they're right downstairs at Century Hardware, enjoying fall and winter in Alaska. It starts with a trip to Frontier Outfitters for your Alaskan lifestyle.
Don't miss 50-50 Friday on KFAR. Every Friday morning at 9 a.m. sharp, we offer up amazing gift certificates from different local businesses. That's when they go on sale for half price. From incredible food offers to fantastic services, you'll get it for half price every Friday at 9 a.m. So don't miss out on this offer.
What's the Hungry Robot? Wood-powered pizza perfection with panache, of course. It's the most exciting pizza in Fairbanks. Better yet, the Hungry Robot is this week's 50-50 Friday offer. Try them all. Dilly Dilly, chicken bacon, the Okie Dokie Artichoke, classic pepperoni, and so much more. All baked in their wood-fired brick oven. All half price for 50-50 Friday. Across from the Mattress Ranch on the Old Skis. Look for their big wood-fired copper ovens. Pickup and delivery, wood-powered pizza perfection with panache. The Hungry Robot.
This Friday morning at 9 a.m., log on to our website at KFAR660.com. Simply click on the red 50-50 ticket in the upper right-hand corner and get your gift certificate for half price. That's 50-50 Friday at KFAR660.com.
Might not be bad at that, you know, the snow-covered slopes, skiing, Christianas and the stemming and the plotzing and the shushing, hot buttered rum, light on the butter, and snow.
Snow, 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 snow. It won't be long before we'll all be there with snow. Snow, snow. I want to wash my hands, my face, and hair with snow. Snow, I long to clear a path and lift a spade of snow. Snow, to see a great big man entirely made of snow. Oh, where it's snowing all winter through, that's where I want to be. Snowball throwing, that's what I'll do. How I'm longing to ski through the snow. Those glistening houses that seem to be built of snow. Snow. To see a mountain covered with a quilt of snow. What is Christmas with no snow? No white Christmas with no snow. I'll soon be there with snow. I'll wash my hair with snow. And with a spade of snow, I'll build a man that's made of snow. I'd love to stay up with you, but I recommend a little shut-eye. Go to sleep and dream of snow. Snow, snow.
That was a little song from White Christmas, which I shall be watching before too long here. Welcome back to Patriot Lament. We got Mr. Dave Geese on the other line here, Dave. We got another hour of things. You want to join us? 907-458-8255 is the call in. Remember, we are live on YouTube if you want to jump on there. Let's hit the calls. 907-458-8255. Hello, caller. You're up next.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let it snow.
Come on.
Hey, I was listening, and I just wanted to clear up. You know, we hear this terminology, exceptionalism. Have you heard that word before?
Quite often.
Well, what makes us so exceptional is that we're a Christian constitutional republic. Look around. There's not very many of them. That's what makes you such an exceptional citizen in a Christian constitutional republic. The first 8 words of Alaska's constitution is, "We, the people of Alaska, grateful to God." All these other elements want you to be grateful to this person or that person or some ism or some ideology. But we get to be grateful to God, and that's what's so angering to many. So much.
Is there something that keeps you from being? I got a question. Was Paul grateful to God when he was in prison?
Oh, of course he was.
So what makes our situation different from his?
Well, we have a network. Just as the government, through that evolution, that period of time from then to hence here, the influence, logic, and the reasoning of God's Word, the Holy Bible, help to evolve what we're in a republic here in the West. And so,
is our gratitude to God predicated on any situation we find ourselves in?
Well, God's worthy of praise no matter what.
Agree.
That's what you're digging after. But to redirect attention, this is what's so distinctively unique and exceptional about you. You were born in this jurisdiction, in this country, or you have been legalized here. And you either understand it or not. Now, the first 8 words of Alaska's Constitution is "We, the people of Alaska, grateful unto God." You have to search your soul. You either are or you are not grateful. It's just like almost being saved. You're either saved or you're not. You either know the Lord Jesus Christ as your Savior or you don't. But the true fact is there are many that don't want you even exposed to the truth. That's why they've done what they've done to the public fool system. They don't want you to know about your Savior. They don't want you to know about your wonderful spiritual resources. They don't want you to know about your 90-10 provisions. But they're going to teach you all kinds of darkness. Your kids now. Let's move right along here.
But
if you have kids at this point in the public fool system, you're a fool. Get your kids out of
Josh is making the point that
and do it now.
Josh is making the point that system is an outgrowth of the state of Alaska itself as an entity.
Oh, he hung up. That's okay. Fine. That way we get to talk without interruption. So
I was confused.
So the Bible also says you'll know them by their fruits. Simply putting something that we're grateful to God. Who and what God are they talking about in the Alaska Constitution? I mean, there's nothing in the Bible itself that says that any person, peoples, or anything like that, New Testament wise or whatever, that makes anyone exceptional over anyone else. And it certainly doesn't say anything about place of birth making you an exceptional person just because you're born in America or in some place that has in their constitution that we're grateful to God. Certainly, should we be grateful to God? Yes. Does that have anything to do with the Alaska State Constitution? No. Which goes on afterwards to go and talk about different socialist programs that the state requires. So does that go in the face of what God says? I mean, if you know them by their fruits, the public school system is a state institution. Not sure how grateful I am about that. And there definitely isn't anything in the founding documents of America that says anything whatsoever about us being a nation formed under God. Is there in the Constitution?
No.
I
mean, and that's part of the deist roots,
right?
But you can't
of some of the founders, right?
Yeah, you can't. God's kingdom already exists. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do to make anything better than it. It already exists. It's already perfect. You're already invited to participate. There's no structure that man can come up with to improve upon it.
Right. Is an American more exceptional than a Syrian?
Well, so we remember the Beatitudes from the Sermon on the Mount, perhaps. Right? So Christ tells us who's blessed. He says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For the same way they persecuted the prophets, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." There's nothing in there about being American or middle class or the biggest economy on earth.
Wait, it doesn't say, "Blessed are the Americans, for you will be called exceptional"?
It in fact seems to imply that those who are suffering,
receive blessing. Those who are suffering and stay true to their commitment to be Christ-like in all things. It seems to say, Christ seems to be saying pretty directly that those are the ones who are blessed, not the ones born. That we should be thankful. I agree that we're in a place, and in a time where things are pretty easy, but that's not our blessing, and that's not where our blessing comes from.
Right. There's a difference between a blessing and being thankful. I am thankful that I was born in America rather than Baghdad. They've got it a little bit harder because of America, for one. But that doesn't make America or Americans exceptional. And definitely, I mean, I can see someone, a non-believer, wanting to make a point that America is an exceptional. I mean, American presidents have been telling Americans that they're exceptional for eons, but as human beings, there's no such thing. I mean, biblically, who are the exceptional people? The Pharisees. They weren't really touted as anything to be like. Look at the Pharisee, be like him. No. Not at all. Yeah. Yeah. And again, go back to know them by their fruits. Well, America's fruits suck. We are not a Christian nation because Christian nations, well, there's no such thing anyways. But we are a country that has believers in it, but we do not have a Christian government by any stretch of any imagination whatsoever. Definitely not a biblical imagination. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not covet. Go on and on. That's exactly what government is. So the opposite is true. And if I remember correctly, Dave, tell me if I'm wrong, but I particularly remember when old Satan got to Jesus and said, see all the countries of the world? I'll give them to you if you worship me. And he said, no, get behind me. Y'all can have them. My kingdom's not of this world. But it's already set up. There's already a kingdom, like you said, before America was ever invented. That was a good phone call, though. We appreciate different opinions.
Yeah, being grateful, being thankful for the situation you happen to be in is a really good point. The caller made that point. The challenge, of course, is to be that way in all circumstances, not just because things are good. Like, you should be thankful when things are good, for sure. And the work of being thankful is also to be thankful when things are not good. I mean, that's what real gratitude is. So, yeah.
Exceptionalism. I've always thought the exceptionalism too, the reason that politicians use that is to give themselves free reign to do whatever they want. Remember Bush won when he started Iraq War I is because we were an exceptional people, the city on the hill. That was Reagan, but we were the new world order, the exceptional people. American exceptionalism has not been good for the rest of the world. Let's go on to the calls. 907-458-8255. Hello, caller. You are up next. Go.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, this is Mike. It seems you guys that the Eighth Commandment is being trashed by our, quote, elected leaders, unquote. Thou shalt not bear false witness. What do you think the punishment is of breaking that commandment? That nobody in washing scum right now seems to be following that commandment.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you could go down the entire list, starting with the first commandment too.
Right, but it seems like this is a tool that they're using. I mean, it's endless lies from the entire body of the House and almost every woman in Washington. I mean, look at our own Senator Lisa. She doesn't vote anything she never votes for the Republicans. She votes for the Democrats. Her and Susan Collins and Romney should be ashamed of themselves. And I think they will be. History's going to record them. I mean, Alaskans are very astute, and Lisa's in trouble, in my opinion, for her future legacy. What's it going to be? What's her legacy going to be?
Not very good if I get to write the history books. But
I know. I listen to your show in the morning, the Michael Duke show, and not too many people have a good opinion about her, especially the way she did a U-turn and went back and had a write-in vote when she wasn't happy with the election, the way it turned out. She basically negated everybody's vote and said, you don't have the right to vote, like what they're trying to do now when they impeach Trump. They're saying you don't have the right to vote. Your vote doesn't count. Like they did down in California about 25 years ago. They voted Prop 187 to stop illegal immigration. Almost, it was a majority in the state. The state took it to the Supreme Court, and the World Order and the Supreme Court, or was it the Ninth Circus of Appeals Court, reversed it. So what good does it do to vote? That's what was a downturn in California right there. Plus the motor voter vote they have. You can go into DMV and sign up to anybody. Plus, now Facebook, I saw up here in Alaska, Facebook is registering voters online.
Through Facebook?
Huh. Facebook now, and if they do that nationwide, it's going to be a mess.
Well, we've run into a contradiction here, where on the one hand we've said, what good does it do if you vote, because it'll just go to the courts and get stopped or whatever, and now we're concerned about the wrong types of people being registered to vote. So can you walk me through how you resolve those two ways of thinking?
It's not two ways of thinking. My point of view is California has registered illegal voters, 3 million at least, through DMV and now Facebook. That's what I'm saying. You can register to vote now on Facebook. In California, in states where they go to Supreme Court to negate your vote, why vote? Is what I'm saying. Doesn't that make you furious that the Supreme Court could turn around your vote and say, no, you don't count, even though you're a minority?
Did you catch the first hour? Any chance?
No, sir.
Okay.
I just tuned in.
No, that's cool. Yeah. So in the first hour, we were talking about the recent interview that Joe Rogan did with Edward Snowden. And Snowden spent a couple hours talking about how all of the major intelligence and security decisions in the United States are made illegally in a way that can't even be reviewed by elected officials. It's actually illegal for the illegal action to be reviewed by elected officials, which is another thing that calls into, this is a process that cannot be corrected by elected officials and therefore by voting. And so it calls into question the fundamental worth of voting in a system that's already operating entirely outside of the law.
Or it's operating.
The voting system is corrupted, and we need to go back to the paper ballots and make sure everybody's a citizen. I mean, the Democrats scream that voter.
Okay, that's good. Can we talk about that one real quick?
Sure.
So the voting system is corrupted, and it needs to be changed. What mechanism what mechanism would you use to fix that?
Paper ballots, like the old days, the Chads.
No, but how would you get, so we're at location A, and location A is defined as a place where the voting system is corrupt and doesn't work. Okay, right? That's where we are, right? Is that an accurate statement?
Well, I mean, I would go back to past successful examples. Let's go back the way we used to do it 25 years ago.
Yeah, right. So here's what I'm saying. Where are we now? Okay, we're at point A. How would you describe? Okay, so point A, where we are right now is a place where the voting system is broken and doesn't work. Is that something that you would agree with?
Absolutely.
Okay. So how do we get from there to a different system where voting does work when the proposed process is voting in a system that we both agree is broken and doesn't work? How do you use a broken and doesn't work voting system to get to a system that does work?
Number one, everybody has to obtain a vital check birth certificate.
Right, but how do you implement that? That's what I'm saying. Without
the
voting.
Voters are going to have. Okay,
do you see the loop? Do you see the loop that we're in right now?
No, I understand the irony and the catch-22, but the thing is, and it's too late. It's too late. Don't have registration at the DMV. Prove that you're an American citizen. I mean, when you've got a president that won't even prove he's an American citizen, and he does a shuffle and sidestepping it, I mean, what do you think everybody else is going to do? I mean, the whole system. I mean, our country, in my opinion, has already taken over. Every alphabet agency, from the Department of Interior, look at the Department of Interior, BLM, Forest Service, Fish and Game. They could shut you down, arrest you. They're all packing guns now, thanks to Clinton. They're all carrying. Half of them can't even run a quarter mile. And they will, I've seen them harass people. I've seen them harass people and bully old guys. And why? I in my opinion, Eric Snowden's a hero. Nothing short of a hero. And he took his life into his hands, and Julian Assange, and also Roger Stone. And I can't understand. And Manafort and Flynn, and why our president is sitting on his hands and he doesn't pardon these guys and commute their sentence. I don't get it. I don't get why Trump keeps putting these guys in. One day they're awesome. Mad Dog Mattis. The next day, Mattis, Brennan, Clapper and Brennan still have their security clearance. So go figure. Our country is so screwed up right now that, and then the Democrats, they're jamming the knife in and as hard as they can. The Democrats, in my opinion, are communist fascists. Same difference. One's international, one's national. Italians were national fascists. Russia and the Soviet were international communists. China is more national. But when you got people like the King, LeBron, Hong Kong LeBron, who you know, he probably never stepped into the Great Walmart of China, and you know, and he laughs all the way to the Bank of America, which is probably owned by the Chinese. I mean, our country, where do you start? You have to start by voting. But if your vote's corrupted, what good does it do? It's an ironic catch-22, but you have to start somewhere. And I think Trump is the one-way screw we need. The problem is, what are we going to do in 4 years if he survives a claimed assassination attempt by movie stars, the CIA, you name it? How many people want him dead? Look at the movie stars that say stuff about him. De Niro, Robert De Niro is a pig, in my opinion, and he shouldn't be allowed to make any more movies in America. Go back to Russia, not Russia. I actually like Russia better than I like Robert De Niro. But
there's a bumper sticker.
And the agreement too.
Yeah.
Well, the problem we started with though is you start out with the eighth commandment, the lion. They're all liars. I mean, kind of what we have been promoting is just ignore them all. Sure, we don't. That may not fix some kind of system that we think want to fix, but what is the system that we want to fix? What is there that we want to fix? Why do we want to fix a bunch of liars?
This is what's happened. Every media, ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, they all belong to the same ilk of people, and their god is money and Lucifer. And I don't know if you guys remember, but NBC torched the Chevy step-side pickup back in, I think it was 85. And then came out in the newspaper the next day, Chevy step-side pickups are dangerous. One just exploded, and they did it. They did it. I don't know if you remember that, but ever since then, I've never trusted them. And one by one, they went down, in my opinion. My dad taught me when I was 5 years old that cops would become a target in my day. When I grew up, he said he predicted cops would be a target. My dad was one of the youngest persons to see combat at the Battle of Leyte in World War II. He was I think he was 17, shooting down Japs on a destroyer. And he knew what he was talking about. He got blackballed by the Masonic Party on a refinery job he was going to be a project manager on in Venezuela. He worked in Venezuela many times, and they used to love us down there. They loved my big, bald dad. He looked like Mr. Clean. He wore a Panama hat, and he talked Spanish because he grew up in Panama. But he told me that this was coming. He said the communists, Mike, they're persecuting Joe McCarthy, and then they killed. My dad thought that they had assassinated Joe McCarthy, and there's a lot of people that still do. Joe McCarthy's biggest problem was he accused Hollywood of being communist. Gee, how far off was he? He was right on it, and then all of a sudden he ends up dead. And look at Dr. Nick Begich's dad. I think his name was Hellbog. He was flying. His dad was flying with Hellbog. They crashed in Alaska on his way up here, and they had the coordinates. They never wanted to look for him because Boggs was coming up with a resolution in the Senate that they didn't like. The CIA didn't like it, and they think they blew that plane up. And they have never looked for the plane, even though they had the coordinates. Just, I guess, hours after they knew the plane had gone down, someone had given them the coordinates. Anyway, Nick Begich is on Alex Jones' show every Friday, as you guys know. But I love Dr. Begich. I wish he would run for Lisa's Senate seat. I sure would vote for him. But anyway, I could go on and on and on.
For sure. Yeah. Well, there's a question. There's an infinite number of
Feinstein shut down every trail, fire break, trails. They're trying to restore the West. That's what all these national wildlands are. Feinstein and Boxer in 1989, 87, they flew over California, Nevada, and parts of Oregon, and they said, oh, that looks like a good area for wilderness. Put that on the list. Hey, how about Golden Valley? Put that on the list. Hey, how about the Mojave? Put that on the list. How about Gates, the Escalante Gates in Utah? Put that on the list. By golly, we're going to take them all out. So now, and they never even been there. They flew over. They put so many people out of work, like they put gold mining out in California. They put a $1 billion business under because they won't let dredgers dredge for gold, even though we turned in down there, the miners, I'm a miner, we turned in 147 pounds of mercury to Forest Service. They didn't even say thank you. We cleaned up the San Gabriel River, 200 pounds of illegal trash that only happened to be in the mining section. Take your kids out to Prospect on the East Fork of the San Gabriel, where I learned how to gold mine when I was 5 years old. Now I gold mine up in Coalfoot. But no, we hauled that up that 300-foot cliff, 7 bags, took it to the Forest Service office, pounded on their door. You think they'd answer the door to say thank you? Oh, hell no. They want it that way. They want to bring down the American middle class. It's been a plan. How come there's no whistleblowers for 40 years in the FBI, the CIA, NSA. How come? Where's the whistleblowers on Clinton? They're all, in my opinion, they're all corrupt.
Yes, I agree with that. That's why
hey, I'll let you,
don't agree with
I'll let you guys go, though. I'll listen to you off here. I love your show, but I could go on and on and on and on and on. I am a master at illegal immigration. I know where it started, from Jerry Brown, Jimmy Carter, AFL-CIO, and the house builders in San Diego. I could go on and on and on what I know about those guys. They started the mass exodus back then, and it has not stopped. Well, now it's stopped finally, because we got a man in the White House. Finally, since Kennedy, we got somebody in there that's got some balls.
Does it disturb you that he wants to? Does it disturb you with his red flag laws that he wants to pass?
That disturbs me because it's a generality. You cannot apply a generality to a specific problem, because you're going to suck a lot of people in. You're going to have a mad woman yelling at her husband.
Right, but you realize the guy that you just said that you think's the guy to answer the problems because he has balls is the one that's going to pass that law and sign it into.
I know. I'm really. I voted for Trump, but I'll be honest with you, gentlemen. I'm not voting again.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about.
I don't think I'm going to vote for Trump unless. Because this is why Planned Parenthood is anti-Parenthood is still rolling along.
Yep.
There's no wall. The budget's through the roof. I mean, his core promises. I mean, I love him though, and I do love what he's doing. He's doing more than but the vote. I'm going to vote for him probably, but I'm telling you, I'm really upset because he's killing himself. How come Brandon still has a security clearance? Brandon's causing all this crap because he's got a security clearance. Our president has the power to quash that. Why doesn't he do that? I don't get it. It's killing me.
Maybe he's
what the hell's
part
going
of
on. I don't care. And I like the way he shoots from the hip. I like the way he doesn't have anything scripted, because you're getting it's kind of like a drunk. He's speaking what's on his mind,
But have you thought about maybe he's just really no different than the rest of them? Part of the problem?
No, because
the liars that remember in the very beginning?
He didn't get any money from lobbyists or any other special interests. He used his own money, plus he's donating all his money to charity. So this is a different bird we got in the White House.
Oh, he's a different bird, but I mean, there are.
He's still a bird
when he's. Yeah, let's go. All right. Well, we appreciate
the turkey, right? You meant a turkey.
It fits in the situation with the. You can go on to the next deal. I just got some comments.
Appreciate your call, man.
You got it, boss.
Calling again. Be safe up there.
Yes.
Go ahead.
The situation fits in the situation that the last caller described, and Edward Snowden's describing, fits in with the Christmas story in an interesting way. And we're playing Christmas music now. That's November, and the way it fits in is: does anybody out there remember how Julius Caesar became the emperor of Rome? Was it through a legal democratic process? Show of hands, who thinks it was through a legal democratic process?
I think it was through
it was through a power grab. And that's the metaphor of Rome is like for those who are believers, there's a reason that Christ came when he did. And that story, the Christ story, is timeless in many ways. And part of that is because there's this archetypal story of this free society of Rome. It's this democratic free society. And right before Christ shows up, the elected leader of this society decides that he is going to appoint himself God status. He's gonna take superordinate authority over the law. The law will become subordinate to him. And this is met with a reasonable amount of opposition, but the opposition is overturned. And then once it's overturned, there's no going back. steamrolls on forward. And that's how you get Julius Caesar. And then you get Octavius, which is Caesar Augustus, right? You get this idea of the Caesar at that point. And so in America here, or there, I should say, I'm not in America anymore, you have the same thing. This is what Edward Snowden's talking about. You have effectively the systems that control the real function of government, the state security apparatus and the state surveillance apparatus, don't operate they operate outside of the law. They don't operate within the law. And they haven't for a while now, 10 years, 20 years, who knows? Essentially, as Josh brought up, at least back to Kennedy, because everybody knows, everybody has their suspicions of how that went down, and none of the information's been released publicly. None of that information is publicly available. And the Great Orange decided to re-up the classification on a bunch of that. It comes due, and it can be allowed to expire and be released to the public record, and it wasn't. But this is not a new story. This is the same as the story of Rome. The same. There's no significant difference. And one of the significant parts about Christmas is that Christ comes into this situation. Christ comes into the situation where the left or the right, whoever you think is scarier, has taken over, and there's no more recourse. There's no more legal recourse for the people. Certainly not the Jews at the time, or the Israelites, as it were.
I think they called it voter discrimination.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. And they are all downtrodden, and they're all calling into their local radio shows of the 2,000 years ago era, which would be, greetings, and they'd be meetings in the center of the city or whatever, or meetings in the basement of their homes, more likely, and going, what are we going to do? Are we just going to put up with this? Are we going to agitate and attempt to overthrow the ruler? Are we going to kill the local authorities? Are we going to kill the Roman enforcers in Jerusalem or in whatever city we're in? It was all the same questions. It was identical. The situation was indistinguishable from the one today. And Christ comes into this and has a totally different answer. He doesn't have the answer that Rush Limbaugh has, or Sean Hannity has, or Glenn Beck has, or Nancy Pelosi has, or Elizabeth Warren. He doesn't have an answer that's on that spectrum. It's a totally different answer. And the answer is that you've already been set free. You are already free. All you have to do is accept your open invitation into the kingdom of God. And immediately, it doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter who claims their God over you. They're not. You're free from that. And it may cost you your life, but it redeems your soul. And so we find ourselves in the same situation today. It's indistinguishable. And so we can agitate. You can get infinitely agitated about how Caesar illegally came to power, and about how we need to go back to before Caesar became emperor, back when we had a Roman democracy. But that's not the way. It's just not the way. And we already know the way. This is not a new story.
Yep. Could we just thought of something. Could Jesus be called exceptional, even though he wasn't born in America?
It probably depends on who you ask.
Let's hit the phones. And I like that. Hello, caller. You are next. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about Aristotle. And he wrote a book called Politics. And in that, he said that democracy was the greatest form of tyranny of all possible governments and ways to organize societies. He named a few, including monarchy, constitutional republic, democracy, aristocracy. A couple others are in there too. And he basically said it's a rule of mob. I mean, we've all heard this before, but he was not a big fan. In fact, he moved to a little island away from Athens after he was saying this, because they threatened his life for even pointing out the obvious. And, so when people use that term democracy versus a constitutional republic, it's interesting to point point that out, that, the premise that, and this all goes hand in hand with the voting thing, that this is all going to work out well, is a false premise. You kind of have to stop the person you're talking to right there and ask them, just ask them why they believe that. And also, real quick, I wanted to talk about Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche.
Mm-hmm.
He said that basically a great man will arise in times like these. And this goes with what you were saying about Rome and Caesar, that it would just break down. And then he thought that in his time, the greatest man that had ever lived in Europe was Napoleon Bonaparte. And that was a breakdown after the French Revolution that led to Bonaparte. He talked about the breakdown of society in Rome that led to Caesar's grab for power. So I think there are some legitimate concerns that maybe we could say the Democrats or the leftists have with Trump and being the great man, the strong man that's coming in to spank them. I don't think he is that man, that person, but I do definitely think that that's where this all leads. That's my premise. And it's happened. It's happened before in Rome. You have, I think in Athens, you had the rule of the 30 tyrants, which tyrant didn't necessarily mean a guy who just chopping everybody's heads off back then. It was just basically strong man. And you had Napoleon in France. And so once you get to this stage of societal decay, there's not a whole lot you can do to be like, okay, well, that sounds bad, so let's just be a constitutional republic again. Because Aristotle advocated constitutional republic as one of what he said in his book was that it had very rarely ever existed in his time in any city-state, but that when it had, the people had thrived. And basically, he described sort of where we were 200 years ago and somewhat advocated or tacitly endorsed that version. But to go into democracy and then come back to republic really has never been done.
Well, I think John Adams even said back in that time, a couple hundred years ago, once it's lost for good.
Right. And so like Nietzsche is saying, he said that basically that Europeans were lost, and that they had lost the kind of a spirituality in their life, which goes into the church thing you mentioned. I would say the religion of the country is churchianity, which is just all these dogmas and weird, perverted, politically correct ideologies that are not even scriptural. I don't care what denomination you are, but or if you're even an atheist, you can just open the book and then look at a mega church or pick your poison and be like, these don't have anything to do with one another. So then people don't go, or people clock out of it and say, that's enough of that. And then your local community structure starts to break down because people are atomized, which is, the Joker movie or however you want to make an analogy of that. People are just in their place doing their thing, calling Patriots Lament. And, but that's a major, it doesn't matter what religion we're talking about, it's a major pillar of community. And when people pervert that, as we've seen, and this is all because of the tax status, 5031, the C, whatever it is, they don't want to pay
501c3.
Yeah, they want that. And then the deal was, and this is the Johnson Amendment, that they can't, get fire and brimstone on anybody anymore. We got to all be soy. And so, or else you get that yanked. So you watch the message change with the culture. There's no, there's a few churches out there. I'm not going to throw everyone in this, but you just see them adapting to whatever the dominant culture, which I call globo homo, GLOBOHOMO, which is what this country now promotes. And the churches say, yeah. And anyone that has a head on their shoulders goes, what? So, and the Bible says that's going to happen. It says there's going to be a few good ones and a lot of bad apples and people that are leading you to your own destruction. in the name of Scripture. But I just think more people are waking up to this. I don't know if you've been keeping up with this fight with Nicholas Fuentes versus Charlie Kirk from Turning Point USA. Have you seen that?
No, I have not.
Basically, there's these group of people, they're calling themselves the Groypers, and it's just this internet meme culture of people that are upset with the status quo, and they're going to these well-funded kind of Koch brothers conservatism meetings of the group Turning Point USA. It's got like Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk, I don't know if Heroes in there, but it's basically mainstream conservatism. And they're just bringing up some of the things I just brought up to you and just laughing at them and being like, hey, you know, you just keep talking about gay LGBTQ or whatever, but how does that prevent our culture from being destroyed? And the answer is it doesn't. In fact, it hastens it. But they don't want anyone asking any questions about the modern conservative movement, which is nothing. It's nothing. And they're going to the Q&A hour of these meetings, and just one speaker after another is nailing them with these kind of questions. And so I think we see a civil war of the right, political right. And I'm not a left-right guy, but you see people starting to ask nonconformist questions, which I always think is a good thing, no matter which side we're on. Mm-hmm. You know, leftists asking about banking or organic foods or whatever. That I like that. I don't, you know, and that's kind of in their court, on their court. And then on the right, you have people asking about, you know, endless wars and, you know, what happened to the culture and, you know, in what way is this conservative? And that takeover start all with William Buckley Jr. there with National Review, total plant to to soften up basically they softened up the social conservatives and swapped it in for the free traders as far as the Republicans go. And so, you know, all the tariffs, NAFTA, GATT, everything had to come down. We're one world now. And then any of the people that were like, hey, there's some real social implications of modern life, technology, open borders, like, you know, and a lot of those were really, you know, more hardcore Christian types were pretty much put off to the sidelines and not consulted on their opinion for the party positions. And we're just seeing blowback. We're just seeing the results of that. But yeah, I don't see, I would say especially to the caller, you know, in Russia, they had that samizdat, familiar with that, where they were like faxing each other all this dissident information during the Soviet times. It's called the samizdat. And so basically, like, my point is if you're not towing the line with the way things are going, you are a dissident, and you are engaged in samizdat against the powers that should not be. So you need to act that way, you know, and that goes for all these little group meetings people have. I wish we had freedom of assembly, you know, and that there's a prominent case in town where you show up, I show up, Bob down the street shows up, and the feds show up too, but they're like, hey, I'm a patriot, okay? So be real careful about that. I mean, have your opinions, form your opinions, call the show, write an email, blog about it, but you can't just have 50 people in the barn house together and then be like, we're not all going to get set up, because you are going to get set up, basically.
There's a guy who I've been watching on YouTube, Robert Smith Jr. is his name, and he has this really excellent sermon that I'm going to put in the live chat right now. And he says, we don't need to socialize the gospel. We need to gospelize the social, which is exactly what you're talking about with those 501c3 churches. They've socialized the gospel.
Right.
And the gospel, it means good news. It's the news. It's the only news that's good. Turn off the rest of the news and tune into the good news, because that's what sets you free. And that is the most dissident activity you can participate in. But you will not find it. You won't find it except in watered down form in those 501c3 congregations for the most part. You will find it in home groups and stuff like that. And if federal agents show up to worship with you, well, praise God.
Have you heard of the term the red pill? Kind of comes from the Matrix movie, but even before that, it comes from the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, the one where he goes to Mars. Total Recall.
Total Recall, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we don't need red pills, okay? We need God pills, which is what you're just talking about, okay? But people are always red pilling, and then what I said earlier about, there's not much to be done about this, that's a black pill. Oh, that's a black pill. I'm going to go drink some vodka. No. You got the God
bleach.
Pill. Yeah, you got the white pill, you got a God pill, you got, what's in there. But I totally am on board with you, because it is the good news gospel. And if you read it and then you insert that in the conversation, especially when they're telling you it says something it doesn't say, if you literally fact check that and be like, well, actually, and there's debates about different passages and what does this really mean. But I mean, it's gotten so bad now that if you can just open and read the letters that form words and then understand third grade level, you can go, that's not what it says. And doing that, is what really has to be done, which would be bringing gospel back into the social sphere and not letting them rewrite, memory hole, basically. Memory hole, what you learned in Sunday school 30 years ago is not what we believe anymore. It's like, wait a second. So I'm right on there with you, and great show, guys.
Thanks for the call. All right, we got little time, but we got a full board of callers. So I'm going to take a couple calls, but just try to get them boom, 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 right in there. Hello, caller, you're up next.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Morning.
Hey, government, why do we need them? Because they were instituted among men to secure our rights. And I'll leave it at that and let the next caller go. Talk to you later. Bye.
All right. That was basically a reference. I think we take the reference John Locke, but the Locke says a little bit more about it after that, which I know the caller knows that too. So we got one more. Hello, caller, you're up.
Hello.
Hello.
Anarchy is self-rule, not rule over others. And that's why I'm an anarchist. I don't want to rule anybody, and I don't want to be ruled. And a person moves from personal volition, not through force. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the call. And that will do it for the callers, because we're just about out of time. That was a good little talk through there. We had a few callers and disturbed about political, the political nonsense that's going on and fixing this and fixing that. And I think just to end the show off here, you're never going to find your happiness if you're worried or concerned or want to try to fix politics or fix the government. They will always all disappoint you. And they're human beings. And the saying is that humans are incapable of controlling themselves, so we need human beings to control us. And if you think you're going to find happiness or a way of life that's going to be prosperous in that area, or if that's the solution, you'll never get there. You'll always be left out. I don't know. Anyways, You got the last word, Dave, then we got to roll.
To all of our people following us on YouTube, if you can give us a like and subscribe while you're there, that would be great. If you guys want to contact us, go to or email us at david@patriotslament.com or joshua@patriotslament.com. And check out the YouTube. All of our old episodes are up there. Go to youtube.com and check out Radio Free Fairbanks. Just search for Radio Free Fairbanks.
All right. Thanks, David. We'll see you guys next week.
And beyond.
Now listen to Health Talk.
Prevent a heart attack. Here's your host, Dr. Scott Looper.